Okay, good. Let's give one more minute and start. I think recording works as well. Okay. So please write your questions in Q&A sessions. You're also welcome to use the chat. And then, so hello everyone. Welcome to today's interview practice sessions for data science, data analysis. My name is Murat. I'm Stanford scientist, serial entrepreneur. Background goes to physics, biophysics, bioengineering, has been working on AI, especially medical AI projects for the last 20 years. So we have here Dr. Jeran. He's Magnimind co-founder, faculty in San Jose State University, as well as former faculty in Santa Clara and Case universities. He's been working on a lot of medical AI projects with me at Stanford University. And we have Sami, is an engineer, AI engineer in C3 AI. He's a MIT alumni. He's a Magnimind faculty. His crew is one of our top crew in Magnimind Academy. So we have, if you are not coming from our meetup groups, our friends shared meetup groups list. We have 30,000 members in 7 groups. We make our direct announcement of these programs in there. Start with the meetup groups. If you're not a member, welcome to join these groups. And our team has shared our websites and our social media accounts. So, and one thing I recommend, the last one has been shared, YouTube. YouTube channel is one of the richest data science content there that we host over 300 events. Most of these events, we put our recordings in there. If you want to see the big picture of data science, what people doing in different fields, that I highly recommend that one. So welcome to today's sessions. Before we start, actually, I have some announcement. We are launching in Magnimind Academy, launching a new program, bootcamp, we call mentorship-led internship program. We actually provide a lot of details like real-life projects, mentors from top companies, practice interviews, lectures, career coaching, and interview Q&A sessions. So we upgraded our packages actually this year, this for March batches. Initially, we had only one package. Now we diversify package. Our friends will going to share those new package. We're getting applications and programs start in March 15. We have a package for beginner, intermediate, advanced. If you are starting from scratch in the data science, we have more extensive 24 weeks of program plus 6 months support after. And we have intermediate program as well, 15 weeks program for people and intermediate level, but they need a lot of practice and they need a lot of like a real world experience. And we have advanced program. People want to switch to maybe higher career. They want to move to from current positions to better data science positions. We have those packages as well. So one of these highlights is we really give real world projects, company mentors, like every student get to work with 5+ mentors and one-on-one base. So company and Silicon Valley exposures we give. And our crew is half academic, half industry. So this is announcement. Then I will move to actual program. So before we start, we want to do a small poll. If everyone takes a few minutes to understand your background. And then I launched this small polls, quizzes. Please just fill those out. And then we will start with the actual session. Good. So at the end of the program, we have a special really discount coupon for the programs upcoming. And then if you want to take the coupons, we want you to finish this polls. To understand the background for, we want to repeat this once, maybe better versions of this program, like this workshop. So your background, understanding your background will help. So anything Dr. Jiran and Sammy, you guys want to add, welcome to add. And people have a questions, you guys can ask from Q&A sessions and ahead. Okay, good. Let's see, poll is there. I'm actually launching the second poll now. Okay, so we'll do that one next. Okay, good. I think we'll do the follow-up throughout the program. We'll have those polls. So, Dr. Jeran and Sammy, I guess when you're ready, you guys can start it.
I did. Yeah.
So on my end, I can share it. Let's just go for it. There we go. Cool. Okay, just to give some context here, we're going to go through different parts of the data science interview. A big part of it will just be focused on practical interview questions. So we have over 20 questions that we can just have planned and kind of cover and understand where our strengths are, review how the answers or the questions are expected to be answered in an interview. But first, I just wanted to give some context before that. So high level goal, we want you to completely understand what to expect in your data science interviews, know how to plan and prepare for these interviews using some helpful resources that we've gathered, and then ultimately feel confident to land the job, do well on the interview, do all of that. And just some context. So from my end, I mean, I'm currently C3 AI. I've been there 2.5 years, and I'm very actively involved in the interviewing process at C3. So a lot of the tips are coming from practical experience of me reviewing hundreds of data scientist resumes who are applying to our positions. And, I'm going to give you my input on what I think will help you and what will, serve you best. And then, of course, the program overall, we would just drill into that even more. High level, maybe you're familiar with this or maybe you're not. A hypothetical path to a data science job would be starting with making a compelling resume. So this is actually a part I think a lot of people get hung up on. I'm finding that most people, and correct me if this is not your experience potentially in the chat, but even getting the interview seems to be difficult. And I'll kind of dive into why this might be the case. Right? There's the whole job hunt element of it. And then typically, assuming you've gotten past that point and you're actually speaking to a recruiter, you might do an online assessment, right? Which is timed and graded technical questions. You might have a recruiter or manager phone call. And then typically some type of, and I'm pointing at bullet point 5 here, some type of 30-minute to 1 hour technical assessment, depending on the role, cover a technical concept. You might be able to expect a take-home assignment. And then usually there's some longer 3 to 5 interview session of multiple hours, deep dive into several areas in data science before finally, you get into offer negotiation. This is just a sample question of what you might expect. right, for machine learning, let's say explaining cross-validation and the motivation behind it. We're not going to cover it right now. We're going to save actually covering them for the end of the presentation. But I just wanted to give a flavor for what is to come next, right? Understanding cross-validation, understanding central limit theorem. Python, of course, since that's one of the core tools. SQL as well, one of your core tools in data science. And generic problem solving, really abstract. Can you take a high level request, frame it as a machine learning or data science problem, and solve it end to end? And just for context, it might sound like a lot. The summary is, this is the post. Others agree it can feel like a lot. There's a lot of breadth and depth in a data science interview, but ultimately that is the name of the game. We're here to get you as prepared as possible.
Sami, there is one comment from Gabriel. So he's saying the funnel has a huge link between 2 and 3. When you were showing that funnel, so he says he sent hundreds of applications. Only meeting with a recruiter happened through direct referral.
Yeah, between 2 and 3. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is super common. And actually, even so, my wife is in a similar position where she's getting stuck between 2 and 3. Despite things that, like, on paper, your resume looks pretty good school, good experiences, but such is the market right now. I think I would give it to cover that point is actually I have a slide prepared for this year, which is resume tips. First, let me cover this and then tell you some thoughts tangentially to that. And then I'll try and keep an eye on the chat in the meantime. Yeah, the only job interview I've gotten is through a direct referral. Typically, that is your best bet. But for just making your resume compelling, try not to, in my opinion, reinvent the wheel. Schools have very accessible free templates. Just copy Harvard's or MIT's templates. They post it online and populate it with your information. One page, common sections. My biggest thing, and maybe this is why some people are having troubles, your resume needs to not only scream, I am a data scientist, but like scream, I'm an exact match for this role. Unfortunately, for a given role, there are just so many applicants. It is hard to uh, really, it's hard to pass everyone through. Typically, I think screeners are looking for resumes that just exactly match what the job description is. I'll tell you, and again, it may not be ideal, but this is the way the system is. Typically, I'm looking for reasons, or interviewers and screeners are looking for reasons to not move you on. And you want to give them no reason to not move you on because there's so many people, I have to just squeeze the funnel as much as I can. Your resume needs to scream, I am like perfect for this role. That's kind of the precision sniper approach that I think works better these days. A generic resume that doesn't really match a role is in 99 point something percent of cases, in my experience, not going to move you forward to the next round to actually being seen by a human. Now, if you have a connection, that's fine because they know you as a person and they'll be able to get you from step 2 to step 3. But without that, you need to make sure on building a good resume. Again, make it impact driven. But there's plenty of videos that cover that. One more thing practically is jobs get filled with applicants very fast. So you want to make sure you're applying to very recently posted roles. That's another way to kind of help you out. So some tips there. Just to quickly brush through this, it can take time. There's a low response rate. Actually, there you go. Referrals are very helpful. So, don't be afraid to reach out to your network. And there are tools to help make this process faster. What you're seeing on the right is I found somebody actually posted their funnel of applications, how many ended up actually getting anywhere. And I think only about a handful got to like a phone screen or a technical phone interview and whatnot. So again, most unfortunately don't go through. I'll just quickly. Yeah, I see a question on is the one-page resume still relevant? I still think it's relevant because what you want is a concise resume. Just to flash the slides up. Resumes are being reviewed in 10 seconds. Your first impression should be immediate on the first page. Basically assume no one is even looking at the second page. Unless you are an industry veteran with 10, 15 plus years of very relevant experience, you don't need the second page. Okay. I want to take about 5-ish, maybe up to 10 more minutes prefacing the interview and what to expect. And then we can just jump into some questions and, do a bit of an interactive session on data science concepts. So there's some core pillars here from the coding side, from machine learning and statistics, and from general problem solving. This is what to expect. Now, the good news is you don't need to know all points in this quadrant because there are different flavors of data science job function spectrum. Data science is incredibly wide in what it means and practically what you'll do day to day. But one simple way to think about it is it lies on this spectrum, on this line, where on one end, you're very product analytics focused. This is closer to the business function, where you're doing maybe more A/B testing, more metrics and analysis. SQL is your go-to. Really, you're trying to distill insights from analytics and improve the business in some way. On the other end is, I guess, what you might call like a machine learning engineer. This is heavy into coding. You're expected to be software engineer level of coding, but with a machine learning engineer skill set as well into developing models, deploying models, all of that end to end. And again, you would focus more on ML theory, Python, all that good stuff. Now, all roles could be a mix of these two, but keep in mind when you apply for a position that they generally come in one of these two flavors and match your resume accordingly and match your prep accordingly. These are some helpful resources that I strongly recommend to just get familiar with these concepts, right? Machine learning and statistics, if you want specific interview questions, there are YouTube channels like StatQuest and well-known books like The Elements of Statistical Learning. For Python, I'm sure many of us have heard of LeetCode. There's also websites like NeetCode that do a really great job of packaging this content. And again, just not to go over every point, but for SQL, A/B testing, and just general prep, there's a lot of great resources. And feel free to go through these and use them as you see fit. I won't go through these sections right now, just kind of assessing at what level you would be at, but no worries, not in scope for this presentation. And yeah, so hopefully what we'll do here now is just give a brief level overview of what it takes to get to point 3. And then hopefully once you get here, now we can come in and work on some actual practical questions that might come up, how you can think about answering them. Maybe you'll get a feel for your current preparedness level and the desired preparedness level to make sure you actually ace these interview questions. Okay. So with that, I think let's jump into some mock interview questions. How's that
Semi,
sound?
Semi, before we start with the questions, so there are a couple of questions regarding the resumes, maybe a couple of minutes on them. For example, what should be the sequence of the resume? Should the work experience come first, education come second? So I think most companies prefer it this way, right?
Yeah. Most companies would probably prefer that order. My opinion is, okay, if you are a student, and again, it's just my opinion. If you're a student, education first, so it's kind of clear you're still in your program and it'll say you're in progress. Otherwise, if you're already working, yes, typically experience is first. But if there's something very impressive in your education, for example, and again, it's just the way things are, but if you went to a very well-known school, then you might want to put that higher up since that's something that's going to catch a reviewer's eye, right? Like, for example, if you went to Stanford, of course, that's going to catch someone out. It's a way to differentiate yourself. So that might help. Not that it hurts if that's not the case, but if it is, it's something you can put up top. But good point. Let me keep checking on some of these QAs. Yep, sequence. Okay. And now one question, I think this is very fair. If I have no DS job experience, how should I frame my resume? My opinion is you need to have a good body of projects you can talk about. So yes, maybe you're not currently working as a data scientist, right? It's kind of a catch-22. I need a job to get experience, and I need experience to get a job. The way around that is through some types of internships, volunteering, side projects, even finding ways to frame your current role, the data science part of it. But you need to be able to fill out like a full page of data science content. That's really what I think will improve your chances as much as possible. Or again, you have a connection, you have a referral, someone who can hire you because they know you without all this experience already, basically will give you a shot. And my experience is once you have your first position, it really gets a lot easier from there. I'm also seeing, can we get a copy of the slides? I think that should be no issue. It's also being recorded on YouTube and more, so we should be able to revisit it. And I'll just do a quick addressing of the next two questions. So for the SQL coding interview, what is the setting? Can you test your code before submitting, like in lead code, or are you expected to complete it in one try? It depends. Depends on the interviewer. I've had interviews where they just want high level, like they're not even running the code. They just open a Word doc and want you to write out. And, as long as the syntax is close enough, they kind of get the point that you know how to write SQL. Others is more like lead code where you can actually run it and it's expected to pass. I've had less of those though. I think for SQL, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Both can happen. So hopefully that addresses that question. And the next one is example of a personal project that is complex enough for a data science job in replace of job experience. That's a very good one. My advice would be to not do the shallow projects, or at least not emphasize the shallow projects on your resume, because unfortunately it does basically signal novice, right? If it's the Titanic one or like, oh, I trained MNIST, there's no depth there to suggest you really went deep into the problem. I actually think the most interesting thing is find the problem you're curious about. If you can find a data set for it, that's great too. If not, Kaggle has great data sets. And deeply try to solve that problem. Because what I'm interested in as I'm reviewing is, why did you do this? What was the impact? Why was it important? And, what did you do after getting your first solution? Well, a big thing is people will train a model, get a result, get an accuracy, get an AUC, and then stop. But that's not machine learning in industry. That's not data science in industry. You iterate repeatedly, figure out what's going wrong, figure out how to make things better. So I'm really trying to evaluate and understand, have you gone through that process of repeated iteration on a solution to keep making it better? So I would focus on that.
Semi, I just
Okay,
want
Dr. Sharan, did you want to jump in with anything?
this personal project complex. Yeah, I agree. So any project that has been done for a million times, like Titanic or MNIST or Fashionist, so it's not gonna work. So something that it's just I mean, something that you are really curious about. I was talking with a student the other day, so he came up with a project. He's trying to make recommendation on which stock options a person should invest on, and then he developed a model for that. That's a genuine project, something that he's interested in. Another thing that you can do is maybe you can join a research project, volunteer to join a research project, and then be part of that. That will be something that nobody else did, right? So it's a research project. It's just at the frontiers of what has been done in machine learning or data science. So other than that, any project that a lot of people already worked on is not going to signal. And by the way, once you get to work as a data scientist, things that you are going to be doing may not be more complicated than your actually this complex project. So the bar is set high before you enter into that position. Once you get to that position, you will see that things that you are doing are going to be much simpler than maybe your complex project.
Yeah, 100%. That's spot on. Typically, the bar to enter is much higher than the average complexity of the day in the position. Cool. Do you think we should keep looking at some questions or start jumping into mock interview stuff?
Let's just we can go back to questions again, Semi. Maybe we can start with the mock interview questions.
Cool. Okay, let's do it. So there are 21 questions. We will for sure not have time for all of them. I'll try to give a good sampling of machine learning, statistics, and all of that. But this is a classic question. And maybe we can give everyone a few minutes. Feel free to write your answer in the chat as you would in the interview. But how would you explain the bias variance trade-off? And then explain some ways that you would deal with it or handle bias and variance.
Yeah, you please feel free to post your opinion. So your short answer, very short answer, to chat. What do you think? How you would answer this question if it was asked to you in an interview? So very short answer.
Yeah, I am, and both of us are, going through the chat. So, no worries. We're all just here to learn and gain feedback. And we can try and give tips based on some of the answers that we see. In the meantime, I see a question about AI. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a interesting time now where, of course, AI is writing a lot of the nitty-gritty syntax, but interviewers are still expecting that candidates write the code themselves. Uh, there has been no interview I've seen so far where you're being allowed to use AI, at least not for just writing SQL. The expectation is, yeah, you can write out the query yourself, or for lead code, you can write out the Python yourself.
Yeah, Semi, I think yeah, here's a couple of answers.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. Really appreciate everyone who's posting some answers here. Great. And then again, I see, yeah, if you're not sure how to answer it, totally fine. Um, that's part of what we're learning to do. If all of these questions you could answer completely, then you'd be in great shape for most interviews.
Yeah, let's proceed, Semi. So how would we answer this question, right?
Yeah. So let me just try and manage this chat pane here. Just for context, I always like this visualization for bias and variance. Typically, as your model, and I've seen a lot of you grasp the concept. as your model complexity increases, your bias goes down. Bias being uh, model making error because it's too simple. That's how I think about it. At the same time as your model complexity increases, then that's your blue curve. Uh, you may get lower bias, but you get higher variance, and that a small change to your input creates very different outputs of your model, which is not ideal. Typically, you want this sweet spot, right, where you have low bias and low variance. So that's the trade-off we're trying to approach, right? It's the trade-off between ability of a model to fit the training data and its ability to generalize to new data, overfitting and underfitting. Typically, high bias comes from simpler models, which can lead to underfitting, while high variance can capture more complexity in the data, but lead to overfitting, right? And there are ways you can mitigate these effects, right? There's regularization, which we could get into. There's training techniques like cross-validation to make sure you're not overfitting to your training set, but are truly learning parameters that help you generalize to unseen data. Ensemble techniques, even feature selection. These are just a few of the ways that, explaining the bias variance trade-off, and then more interestingly, how you might handle bias and variance in day-to-day modeling.
So, Semi, if somebody would answer this question referring to model complexity, if model complexity is increasing, I expect bias decreasing. And I would ask how you will play around with the model complexity. How would you increase or decrease model complexity? So, anyone who has any idea about, so what does that mean? Say you are using, let me give an example. Let's say you are using KNN. And then how would you decrease model complexity if your model is KNN? Let's use just a very simple model. If your model is KNN, how would you decrease your model complexity? Decreasing model complexity, yeah, SNA. So the one of the participants, S and A, he says or she says increase N. That is correct, right? So increasing number of neighbors, right, would help us actually decrease the model complexity. If it was a linear regression model, how would you decrease the model complexity? If it was a linear regression model, how would you decrease model complexity? So Patrick says regularization that would help us actually reduce the overfitting and then maybe help us make the model more general. But a very direct answer to reducing model complexity in a linear regression model, reducing model complexity means removing some of the variables, right? So make sure that you have less number of variables in your model. That will reduce the model complexity. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we can continue. Thanks for the answers.
That was great. No, good follow-ups too. And some really good answers in the chat. So it's great to see. Now, I don't want to only go into machine learning, but maybe we can do a couple questions from each category.
Yeah, we can look at different questions here.
Cool. So how about this one? Very, very common. Can you explain the difference between precision and recall? Really explain precision, explain recall, and bonus, if you can explain when you might want to trade off one versus the other, that would make the answer even more interesting.
Yeah, I see some answers posted for the previous question, but I couldn't refer to your answer. Sorry about that.
No worries. Precision and recall. What do we have here? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, there are good answers coming actually.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Establish cost of the company. Makes sense. Yep. Nice. Someone showed the equation for F1 score, which is a nice way to represent both precision and recall performance in a number. Cool. Okay, maybe we can jump into walking through the solution. So in here, we're just looking at typical like confusion matrix, right, where you have expected and predicted values, right, demonstrating what is a false positive and what is a false negative. And I think most people in the chat like nailed this, right? And let me move the chat out of the way, right? Precision measures true positives out of predicted positives, while recall is true positives out of actual positives. So really, I actually like it when you don't just, or it's fine to give the mathematical explanation, uh, but I also like the intuitive terms, right? Like, what does it mean to have high precision? If your model makes a prediction, it is high chance of it being correct, right? What is the chance of it being correct? So minimizing false positives in that case. And depending on your use case, maybe you do want to minimize false positives. I always like the idea of investment decisions. In investing, you don't need to invest in every stock out there, but the stocks you do choose to invest in, you don't want them to be bad. You don't want it to be a false positive. So you probably want to try and maximize high precision in investment decisions. Right. And again, F1 score typically is a common way of combining precision and recall, very often used when you want good performance in both. Right. And someone mentioned this too. Choice of prioritizing these depends on the problem. Recall, for example, for the case of, let's say, your smoke alarm. Your smoke alarm prioritizes recall because it does not want to not go off when there is a fire. The trade-off is your smoke alarm will go off all the time when there is no fire because it's fine to have a false positive. Worst case is you get a bit annoyed and you turn it off by pressing a button. The mistake of having a false negative is there's a fire and there's no alarm, which is obviously a huge problem.
Yeah, thank you, Semi. So, by the way, I'm reading the chat. Gabriel, I like your messages so far. And then Emre, you are giving two examples, and then they are right on the spot. So, thank you. Let me ask, based on Emre's examples, let me ask if this was an interview, if you gave me the definition of recall and precision. Let's say I'm asking you a follow-up question on that. During the COVID time, you are traveling and then you are going to this other country, and then the moment you land at the airport, they take you and then put you under quarantine. So even though you're not showing any symptoms of COVID, you are supposed to remain under quarantine. So everybody getting into the airport has to go through the quarantine again, even though they don't show any symptoms of COVID. So in this case, what are we trying to maximize? Are we trying to maximize recall or are we trying to maximize precision? So that's the first question. And second question is you are receiving loan applications and in this case, you want to give the accept the application that has the highest probability of paying the debt. So in that case, what are you trying to maximize? Precision and recall. So can you give insights on these two questions? Let's start with the COVID question. So if everybody has to go through the what is that quarantine, are we trying to maximize recall or precision? Okay, so let's think a little bit more on this. Some say precision, some say recall. So we're trying to maximize what are we trying to do here? So we are trying to make sure that no one with COVID is going into public, right? So in that case, let's say 1,000 people are coming into the airport. If even one person has COVID, we want to catch that one. So in that case, we are trying to maximize recall, right? So we don't want any any false negatives. We don't want any false negatives. So we want to maximize the recall. False negative is in the equation for recall. Remember that. Yeah, thank you for the answers. And then how about the other case for credit card for credit applications? So you're applying for mortgage, and a lot of people who are good customers are denied, right? So their applications are not accepted. So in that case, what is the credit company trying to maximize, precision or recall? Yeah, definitely, right? So in this case, we are trying to maximize the precision. So we want to we make sure that there is no false positive, right? So positive means
Mhm.
the person is going to pay the debt back. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Okay. I think that covers some of machine learning, maybe one thing, and I'll have to just exit the presentation here and scroll through the slides. Well, we can stick into statistics. Maybe what I'll do is share from here. Just quickly skip through this. Okay. Actually, this is a little bit similar to the original question, so maybe we can skip this one and go here. Okay, another common one, especially for A/B testing roles, product analytic roles. How would you describe hypothesis testing, p-values, and then bonus to a non-technical stakeholder? Let's say a non-technical manager is asking you, well, what does this p-value mean? How would you explain that to them? Okay, seeing some answers. Okay, yeah, seeing a lot of answers, actually trying to make sure I'm skimming through all of them. Cool. Maybe we can jump into this one too. Yassine, if you wanted to give some color here, feel free to. This is definitely your super area of expertise.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. So what we see here is right. So I think a lot of I read the messages. Thank you. So you got it. So p-value indicates how rare, right? You would expect to see this result if null hypothesis was correct, right? Again, p-value indicates how rare, right? How least likely to see this result happening if your hypothesis was correct, right? So that's what we're looking at. If p-value is very small, then it is very unlikely to see this happening if your sample was coming from that population based on your hypothesis. So a couple of questions here. Actually, I read the answers and then I like your answers. A couple of questions maybe here. So let's say your p-value is high. Okay, it's greater than some significance level, right? And then you also should know what significance level means. Let's say your p-value is a high number. So what does that mean? What does that mean if your p-value is high? So what are you gonna do? So you have your null hypothesis, and then you have your alternative explanation of how things are happening. So if your p-value is high, what are you gonna do about that? What is your conclusion? Yeah, it's the probability that this result more extreme was observed. You said so p-value is that, then the you reject the null hypothesis. If your p-value is high, are you going to reject the null hypothesis? It's the opposite, right? So if p-value is low, then you're going to reject your null hypothesis. If p-value is high, are you going to accept the alternative hypothesis, or are you going to fail to reject the null hypothesis? I think these two are extremely different conclusions. I'm repeating, if your p-value is high, does that mean that the alternative is the correct one? Or you just simply don't have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis? Yeah, that's very good. So fail to reject. So if p-value is high, then we fail to reject the null hypothesis. In other words, we don't have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis. When you do hypothesis testing, that's another question I would ask as a follow-up. There is no way we can say that the alternative is correct, right? So we only look at the evidence, and then we say we have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of good answers in the chat.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. This one is another central theory. So what is the central limit theory? And how would you explain its benefits again with this non-technical person? Just to give context, the reason we're, and this is coming from experience, typically interviews will test your technical understanding of a concept, but then also your ability to translate it in non-technical terms, since often data scientists are embedded in cross-functional teams. Not everyone is very technical. So they want to check that you can still get the point across. CLT.
Actually, CLT and hypothesis testing are closely related. So we actually do hypothesis testing based on the results from CLT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Means distribution approach is normal.
Okay, give some good definitions.
Answers, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the moment we talk about CLT, I may ask, so as you give your answers, I may ask some follow-up questions. The first question is CLT, it's about sample mean. So what is sample mean? What do you understand from sample mean? So when I say sample mean, what is that? So there is this population out there, right? So sample is we are randomly sampling data points from that population, and we take the average of those data points. And central limit theorem is about those averages. So imagine that you sampled from the population over and over again, and then you take the average of each of those samples, right? So now those samples are normally distributed. That's all. That's all central limit theorem says, right? The sample means are normally distributed. Another follow-up question, does the population, does it have to have some distribution? Does it, so what if population distribution is not normal? What if population distribution is not normal? Would you still expect sample means distributed normally? If the population distribution is not normal, do you still expect the sample means distribution is normal? Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, exactly. Yes, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the population distribution is. So we are focusing on the distribution of the sample means. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome.
Gabriel is asking some advanced questions.
Yeah. I'm trying to see, let's see, it's 12:46. I mean, what do you think, Yassine? Do you think we should try to cover one or two more or?
Yeah, one or two more, maybe one more question. Maybe you can pick a Python or SQL question.
Okay, let's do Python, since it's a very popular one. Maybe thing with Python is it's always hard to show through slides, but so be it. Okay, typical algorithms, data structures, and algorithm style question, but very common, and it's expected that you're able to actually solve these relatively quickly. But for the sake of this interview question or this, the seminar, feel free to just write your approach. You don't need to write out the actual code or expect that it runs. Pseudocode or approach would be fine, and we can discuss it, right? So let's say you're given an integer array nums. The question is return true if there are any duplicate values in the array. Otherwise, return false. Okay. Bonus on top of that is if you can tell me the time and space complexity of this problem. And potentially bonus two, although it's fine, if we didn't care about time complexity, but wanted to minimize space. So basically different trade-offs. What if time was more important and what if space were more important? How would you handle this question?
So, Semi, if I were taking this interview and then you are interviewing me, maybe I may ask you, so when you say this array, is this array sorted or it's just any array?
Good question. One thing I might ask is how might that change the candidate's approach? Uh, and just to elaborate on that, there are different solutions you could apply if you know it is sorted versus if it's just a random collection of numbers. But it would be great, like in the interview, to ask those clarifying questions. Oftentimes, the question is almost intentionally ambiguous because people want to see, well, how is your ability handling ambiguity? Are you able to ask the right follow-up questions and then provide a solution? Okay, so I'm seeing some good approaches. People are using common data structures, for example, a set. You could also sort in place for time. Fair enough. Right. And I think, yeah, I think people are getting the point across here. There are a couple different approaches. One is a data structures approach, where you would actually just use a set. If you're not familiar with the data structure set, then that's, again, for these style questions, important to know since they're very, very handy. And I do find, I mean, although you could argue, yes, our lead code style questions belonging in data science interviews, I think knowing these concepts is very useful. I mean, I use sets and dictionaries all the time writing code. So it is good to know. Here I have like kind of multiple solutions at play, just kind of throwing out different approaches. You could simply just turn this array into a set. And if your set is shorter than the array, by definition, you had a duplicate value in there. So you could simply return the logical operator of the length of the set being equal to the length of the original array nums. There are some other approaches, iterating through it. And if you wanted to minimize space, yes, you could sort it and basically just check once you sort it, are two subsequent numbers identical? And if two subsequent numbers are identical, then you know that there is duplicate values. I've had questions like this, and one thing, you can start with a simple premise and then keep trying to add optimization. So for example, okay, what if it is sorted, for example? Again, what if we have a certain restriction on space complexity or time complexity? And interviewers may add these layers as we go on. Okay, I think on time we're at the 1 hour mark. So I wanted to make sure there's still time for some follow-ups.
So Mahir is asking, what do you mean by time and space complexity? I think it's an important concept, Mahir. Maybe you can go back and read a little bit on that. Uh, Time is how fast the solution you're going to be finding, how many iterations or how many operations you're going to have to get the solution. Space is how much of memory uh, you need for getting to the solution.
Yeah. Again, for these algorithm questions, which typically are for more coding heavy data science roles, like closer to the machine learning engineer side of things. Again, software engineer adjacent, the expectation will be to understand how long code is expected to, like the time, struggling to get the definition, but the time elements of the code you're writing and how much space it may take up, right?
Yeah, before we leave, Semi, there was SA was asking this question on the other side too. So, how is the job market how is the situation in the data science job market? So, what I hear from people in the market, in the industry, on the field is companies are hiring. So even there are layoffs. So companies are hiring. So it's going on. But the thing is, companies are looking for maybe more experience. It's a lot more difficult to find a very beginner position in data science. It's more difficult than what it was maybe 5 years before. So that's why it's very important that you have some experience in terms of a project or working on a research project or in a small company before you get to job market.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same things. There is hiring, but I think it's a little bit more tailored towards senior roles. And just with the way, if you think about it, it's just a marketplace. There's supply and demand. There is more supply for a lot of the entry-level positions than demand. So companies just feel like they can be extremely picky, which is why you want to make sure your resume and everything is as good as it can be to get through all those barriers.
Yeah. And then some of the participants are asking about the recording of this session. The recording of the session will be available. And Semi, we are going to continue with this session, right? So we have more questions that we didn't have time to discuss. So we might have another session, a similar session to this one.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, yeah, I just want to have some wrap up in here and give some of those, like we have behavioral soft skills that we didn't cover. We're going to have another one, but just briefly tell you that just common questions. So handling a failed team project, how you do that, resolving data-driven disagreements, and how you can stay up in data science. And also a lot of things that how you can explain complex data to non-tech stakeholders. This kind of behavioral soft questions really related to also they might understand your behavior in case studies as well. So while you explain in case studies, that kind of questions may come up, or that kind of behavioral aspect of your strengths or skill set may come up too. So like a loan default prediction model could be one of case studies, and like recommendation system, improving Netflix algorithm, that kind of case studies may come up too. So there are a lot of questions. We'll actually follow up with those sessions. What I'm trying to do, I'm launching more last webinars. So, and just to also remind you that our team has actually launched a coupon code for our mentorship slash internship programs. We diversify programs to accommodate different range of people. Earlier, we were only recruiting intermediate to advanced level people to our programs, but now we can accommodate more beginner levels. So there's coupon code there. we assign 4 or 5 mentors, 101 level programs. And most importantly, this, as we see from the polls, people don't have an experience. As Sami said to people looking for senior level or experienced people. So at Magnimind Academy, we give that experience in one of our package that includes our affiliation with our partner companies. So once you were in program after 15 weeks into the program, so we get you affiliated with companies that you work on their real life projects. And that makes your CV more stronger than average. So these are the few highlights I wanted to give. If anyone else, Sami or Dr. Jeran, has anything to add, please welcome to add. Otherwise, we have a next week info session on our programs, in more detail what we provide, what we offer. Welcome to join that. It's been shared just now. Hope to see you in our future programs. We're going to have another of this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.